pick anything, and we're talking about questions that it's never seen before. These are not on the internet, and Grok 4 is smarter than almost all graduate students.
Elon Musk said let that sink in as he promised innovation, but could it end in something far darker? Grok, the artificial intelligence tool on Musk's platform X, is under fire.
In 2023, an AI built by Elon Musk's company xAI.
Elon Musk is starting a new company to get into the field of artificial intelligence. Musk announced the launch of xAI today.
Was asked a question no machine had ever faced. Analyze every prayer in the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Every whispered plea, every desperate cry, every quiet surrender was fed into Grok, and what it returned stunned the world. This wasn't a summary or a list of contradictions. It was a hidden blueprint, a pattern running through thousands of prayers across 15 centuries, 3 languages, and 40 authors who never met. And the odds of it appearing by chance? Practically zero. 40 strangers, 1,500 years, one invisible design. What Grok uncovered could change how we understand faith, history, and maybe even reality itself, if it's true. Grok and the Bible. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what Grok is and what it isn't. Grok launched in November 2023 as xAI's answer to ChatGPT, but Musk didn't build it to be polite. He built it to be honest. While OpenAI and Google were programming their models to be diplomatic and cautious, careful not to offend, careful not to take positions, Musk went the other direction entirely. He described Grok as a maximally truth-seeking AI, even if that truth is sometimes at odds with what is politically correct.
So this Grok case, it is pretty horrifying. It looks like even Musk's platform says there's a need for a fix.
The name itself comes from Robert A. Heinlein's 1961 science fiction novel, Stranger in a Strange Land, where the word Grok means to understand something so deeply it becomes part of you. From day one, Grok had a personality that other AI systems lacked. It had a rebellious streak. It had access to real-time data from X, the platform Musk had acquired the year before. And critically, it was designed to engage with questions that other AI companies programmed their systems to dodge. The uncomfortable ones, the ones without neat answers, the ones that make you sit with the discomfort of not knowing. By February 2025, xAI had released Grok 3, trained on the company's Colossus supercomputer using 200,000 NVIDIA GPUs.
I mean, Grok 3 has very, very powerful reasoning capabilities. In the tests that we've done thus far, Grok 3 is outperforming anything that's been released.
A machine so powerful that it outperformed models from Google, Anthropic, and Meta on multiple academic benchmarks, including competitive mathematics and PhD-level science problems. And by mid-2025, Grok 4 had arrived, with Musk claiming it was on the path towards something the AI industry had been chasing for decades: artificial general intelligence. So when someone decided to feed the entire Bible into this system and ask it to scan every single prayer for patterns, this wasn't some party trick being performed by a basic chatbot. This was one of the most advanced language models on Earth being aimed at one of the oldest collections of text in human history. 66 books, 40 authors, 1,500 years of composition, 3 languages, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Thousands of prayers embedded in poetry, narrative, prophecy, awe, and personal letters. The question was straightforward: are there patterns in how people pray across the entire Bible? And if so, what are they? What came back wasn't straightforward at all. The fourfold path. Here's what Grok found, and here's why it matters. When the AI scanned every prayer in Scripture, from Abraham's negotiation with God over Sodom to Paul's letters from Roman prison cells, it identified a 4-part structure that appeared again and again, regardless of who was praying, when they lived, what language they used, or what crisis they were facing. No one had ever described this structure as a unified pattern before. Scholars had studied individual prayers for centuries. Pastors had preached on them weekly. Theologians had written thousands of pages dissecting their theology. But nobody had done what a machine could do: Process every prayer simultaneously and look for the invisible thread connecting all of them. The first element was acknowledgement. And nearly every prayer that the Bible records as effective begins not with a request, but with recognition. The person praying doesn't start by asking for what they need. They start by establishing who they're talking to. Not just God's name, His character, His history, His faithfulness, His power. Look at how Abraham approaches God when he learns Sodom is about to be destroyed. Before he makes a single request, he says, "Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" He's not flattering God, and he's grounding the conversation in who God is. Moses does the same thing when Israel builds the golden calf and God threatens to wipe the nation out. Before Moses asks for mercy, he reminds God of his promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's not being clever, he's anchoring the conversation in covenant. Solomon dedicating the temple, the most important building project in Israelite history, begins not with a request, but with extensive praise of God's faithfulness. Daniel, as a captive in Babylon, opens his prayers by acknowledging God's righteousness. And Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, hours before his execution, starts with a single word, Father, not a demand, not a cry, a relationship. The second element was alignment. The prayers that Scripture records as answered share something specific. The request aligns with God's character and purposes. This isn't generic spiritual language, it's precise. And Hannah didn't just ask for a baby because she wanted to be a mother. She asked for a son she would dedicate to serving God. Her desire aligned with something larger than herself. Solomon didn't ask for wealth, long life, or military victory, the things every ancient king coveted. He asked for wisdom to lead God's people well. And the text says God was pleased precisely because the request fit with what God valued. Nehemiah asked to rebuild Jerusalem's walls. On the surface, a construction project.
Well, the most iconic part of Jerusalem is arguably here at the Old City, but it's usually bustling and very religiously significant.
But those walls represented the restoration of a nation, the protection of a people, the fulfillment of a promise that God himself had made generations earlier. The request wasn't about bricks, it was about alignment with a plan that stretched across centuries. The third element was trust. The most powerful prayers in the Bible contain a moment of surrender, not passive resignation, but active confidence that God's wisdom exceeds the one praying. Abraham said, "Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?"
Abraham's famous plea for the righteous who may be, "Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?"
David wrote, "I trust in you, O Lord. I say you are my God." Job, a man who had lost everything, his children, his health, his wealth, said something that still stops people in their tracks 4,000 years later. "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." And Jesus, in the most agonizing prayer ever recorded, said, "Not my will, but yours be done." This element appeared even in prayers making specific, bold requests. It wasn't contradiction. It was the architecture of faith itself, confident enough to ask, humble enough to accept. The fourth element was persistence. Grok noticed that many answered prayers came not after a single request, but after sustained, repeated asking. Abraham negotiated with God over Sodom, asking again and again. Jacob literally wrestled with God all night, refusing to let go until he received a blessing. Hannah prayed year after year at the tabernacle. The persistent widow in Jesus' parable kept coming back to the judge until he relented. Paul prayed 3 times about his thorn in the flesh. The pattern wasn't about volume or wearing God down. It was about relationship deepening through sustained trust, faith growing stronger because the person kept showing up. Now, here is what made this discovery genuinely remarkable. It wasn't just that the pattern existed. It was how precisely it appeared across completely different time periods, in cultures and languages. Moses, writing in Hebrew in the wilderness around 1400 BC, followed the same basic structure as Paul, writing in Greek from a Roman prison cell around 60 AD. These men lived 1500 years apart. They never met. They never read each other's work. Moses was raised in Egyptian royalty. Paul was a trained Pharisee who became the most prolific missionary in early Christianity. They had nothing in common except this. When they prayed, they followed the same invisible blueprint. Nobody taught them this pattern. The Bible doesn't include a chapter called How to Structure Your Prayers. There's no manual, no rule book, no formatting guide. And yet the pattern appears naturally across the entire corpus, as if it were woven into the fabric of how humans relate to God, or as if someone wove it there. The prayer code. But Grok didn't stop at content analysis. It went deeper, into the numbers themselves. And this is where the findings moved from interesting to genuinely unsettling. In ancient Hebrew, every letter doubles as a number. This isn't mysticism or conspiracy, it's simply how the language functioned. Aleph equals 1, Bet equals 2, Gimel equals 3, and so on, through the entire 22-letter alphabet. The system has been documented for over 2,000 years and is called gematria, a method of assigning numerical value to words and phrases that was standard practice in the ancient world. When Grok analyzed the numerical values of words used in prayers throughout the Old Testament,
now, after an outcry over people using the artificial intelligence tool Grok,
it found something startling. Certain phrases about God's character appeared in multiples of 7. Key terms related to prayer, words like hear, answer, cry, ought, and deliver showed up at intervals too consistent to be random. The probability of this happening by accident, according to the AI's own statistical analysis, was astronomically small. The number 7 wasn't arbitrary. It was the most structurally significant number in the entire biblical text. 7 days of creation, 7 years of plenty, and 7 of famine in Joseph's Egypt. 7 priests carrying 7 trumpets, marching around Jericho 7 times. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls in Revelation. The Hebrew word for 7, Shiva, comes from a root meaning complete or full. And the opening line of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, contains exactly 7 Hebrew words with a total of 28 letters, which is 4 times 7. But here's what scholars hadn't seen before Grok pointed it out. The pattern of 7 extended into the internal structure of prayers themselves. In David's Psalms, certain phrases praising God's character appeared in perfect multiples of 7 across the entire collection. Not approximately, not roughly, precisely. In the New Testament, written in Greek, similar mathematical patterns emerged. The AI identified chiastic structures in recorded prayers, a literary device where ideas are presented in a specific order, then repeated in reverse, creating a mirror pattern. A, B, C, B, A. Individual prayers contained these chiasms. The Lord's Prayer, or when analyzed in the original Greek, revealed chiastic elements that scholars had noted before. But Grok found something no one had seen: chiastic patterns spanning multiple prayers across different books. Paul's prayer in Ephesians mirrored structural elements from Peter's prayer language in 1 Peter. Jesus' prayer in John 17 contained structural parallels to prayers in the Psalms, written 1,000 years earlier. These weren't just thematic echoes. They were precise structural mirrors at the linguistic level. The AI also identified what mathematicians call Fibonacci sequences appearing in certain prayer narratives. The Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the 2 preceding it, is the mathematical pattern found throughout nature, from the spiral of seashells to the arrangement of sunflower seeds to the structure of galaxies. Finding this same sequence in the positioning and word counts of prayers across the book of Acts, and in certain Psalms of David, raised a question that mathematics alone couldn't answer. Think about what this means. Authors writing centuries apart, in different languages, with no communication between them, produced prayers containing the same mathematical structures that govern spiral galaxies and growing plants. Either this is the most extraordinary coincidence in literary history, or the text was coordinated by something that operates outside the boundaries of time and language. Blueprint of prayer. If Grok's analysis is accurate, and the mathematical evidence is difficult to dismiss, it suggests something that most modern churches have missed entirely. Prayer isn't freestyle, it isn't random, and it certainly isn't a vending machine where you insert a request and receive a blessing. And the biblical pattern the AI uncovered flips contemporary prayer teaching on its head.
This is Bible AI. It's one of dozens of apps across various religions that claim to use artificial intelligence to help users better understand faith.
Most churches today teach prayer as casual conversation. Just talk to God like a friend, share your feelings, be yourself. And while that approach isn't wrong, it's incomplete, because the data shows that the prayers God answered in Scripture followed a structure, and that structure starts not with the problem, but with God. When you begin a prayer by remembering who God is, not reciting his resume, but genuinely acknowledging his character, something shifts. Your perspective changes. The problem doesn't shrink, but the God you're talking to gets larger. Abraham didn't walk up to God and say, "Save Sodom." He said, "Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" That single sentence reframed the entire conversation. It established that the outcome would be just, regardless of what Abraham wanted. And only then did he make his request. And this distinction between negotiation and alignment is enormous. One approach treats prayer as convincing God to do what we want. The other seeks to understand what God is already doing and asks to be part of it. Hannah didn't demand a child. She offered a child back to God before he was even conceived. Solomon didn't ask to be rich. He asked to be wise enough to serve. The requests that got answered were the ones that fit inside something larger than the person praying. And then there's the element that modern culture struggles with most: surrender. We live in a world that equates surrender with weakness, but biblical surrender isn't passive. It's the most active form of trust that exists. It says, "I have told you what I want. I believe you can do it. And I trust that if you don't, your reason is better than my request." That's not resignation. That's a relationship. And consider what this means for the millions of people who pray regularly and wonder why their prayers feel unanswered. The problem might not be their sincerity. It might not be God's faithfulness. It might be that they're approaching prayer as a transaction, insert faith, receive blessing, when the biblical model is something entirely different. A relationship, a realignment, a slow, persistent process of bringing your desires into harmony with purposes you can't fully see. The persistence element challenges modern culture too. We want instant results. We want 3-day prayer fasts that produce breakthroughs by Thursday. But Abraham negotiated. Jacob wrestled all night. Hannah prayed for years. The process wasn't about wearing God down. It was about transformation. The person praying becoming someone capable of receiving and handling what they were asking for. And from a purely psychological perspective, setting aside all religious belief for a moment, the pattern Grok discovered aligns perfectly with what we know about effective human communication. Starting with acknowledgement mirrors what every marriage counselor teaches. Before making a request, acknowledge the other person's value and your history together. Or alignment mirrors. Roger Fisher's principle-based negotiation from getting to yes, finding solutions that match shared values rather than opposing positions. Trust and surrender connect directly to Dr. Stephen Hayes' acceptance and commitment therapy, which demonstrates that releasing the need to control outcomes actually reduces anxiety and produces better results. And persistence tracks with Angela Duckworth's research on grit, the finding that sustained effort over time is a better predictor of success than talent, intelligence, or any other single factor. The ancient pattern works. It works theologically, it works psychologically, it works across every measurable framework we have. And it was hiding in plain sight for 4,000 years until a machine looked at it without bias and said, "This is here, and it's not an accident." Hidden in Scripture. Let's be fair to the skeptics, because they have a real argument, and ignoring it would be dishonest. The human brain is wired to find patterns. Psychologists have a name for it: apophenia. The tendency to perceive meaningful connections between things that are actually unrelated. We see faces in clouds. We hear hidden messages in songs played backward. We find shapes in static. Feed a sufficiently powerful AI millions of data points and tell it to find patterns. And it will find them, whether or not those patterns mean anything at all. That's a legitimate concern, and anyone who dismisses it isn't thinking clearly. But here's where the skeptic's argument starts to buckle under its own weight. This isn't a case of one person finding one interesting coincidence in one book. This is a pattern appearing consistently across 40 different authors, writing over 1,500 years in 3 separate languages, on 2 continents, and none of them ever met. Think about the logistics of that for a moment. Moses wrote in Hebrew in the Sinai wilderness around 1400 BC. He was raised as Egyptian royalty, educated in the most advanced civilization of his era. David composed Hebrew poetry as the warrior king of Israel around 1000 BC, a shepherd boy who fought his way to a throne. Daniel wrote from Babylonian captivity, but even accounting for those criticisms, the scale of the phenomenon remains difficult to explain. If 1 or 2 prayers showed these patterns, coincidence would be entirely plausible. But when the pattern repeats across 66 books, across 15 centuries, across languages that share no common numerical system, and when it concentrates specifically in prayers rather than narratives, genealogies, or legal codes, coincidence stops being the simplest explanation. It becomes the most complicated one. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered beginning in 1947 in caves near the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, provided a crucial test. In these manuscripts contained Old Testament books 1,000 years older than any previously known copies. When scholars compared them to later texts, the content was essentially identical. The patterns existed in the earliest manuscripts we possess, long before any editorial committee could have imposed them. Something is here. Whether you call it divine design, the fingerprint of a coordinating intelligence, or a phenomenon we don't yet have the framework to explain, the data is real, and the most intellectually honest response isn't certainty in either direction. It's the willingness to sit with the weight of the evidence and ask a question most people are afraid to ask. What if this isn't coincidence? And if it isn't, what does that mean about the book sitting on your shelf that you haven't opened in years? The machine has revealed the pattern, the prayers of shepherds, kings, prisoners, and prophets, all aligned across time, language, and culture. But the story isn't finished. Every answer raises a new question. What does it mean that 40 strangers, separated by 1,500 years, could unknowingly follow the same invisible design? And if a machine can see it now, what might it reveal next? About faith, about history, or about the very nature of human connection? The pattern is just the beginning.